The headline for the game is not that Tom Brady continues to be the best quarterback of all time when playing after a regular season loss. That's not nearly the headline. The headline is Brady goes back to New England, gets the victory 19-17. He's Mike Golic. I'm Mike Florio. It's Mike along with Mike, Week 4 edition. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well. What a way to end. You know, it was, while I thought there was going to be better games during the day, and I thought the whole thing last night was going to be, oh my gosh, how was Tom going to be received before the game, during the game? What were he and Bill going to say after the game? Turned out to be a pretty darn good game, one that the Patriots had. Now would have been a long field goal that hit the upright, but still, that turned out to be, in the rain, a pretty decent game. Again, people will say maybe not because it wasn't high scoring, but as a former defensive player, I kind of dig it.
You know, there's been a lot of games this year where it feels like, based on the first half, it's just kind of plodding, it's kind of slow, there's not much scoring, but then it gets very compelling in the second half, and that's kind of what last night's game did. At halftime, it's like, yeah, you know, we would have liked a little more scoring. It didn't have to be 24-21 at the half, but it just felt like it took a while to get going. But get going it did. And let's start at the end and work backward, because there's so many different things we can talk about that will be discussed elsewhere, whether we write about them at PFT. We'll talk about them over the course of the next 2 hours. The Brady and Belichick back and forth, the very awkward hug at midfield that resulted in a 20-minute meeting in the locker room, where I assume that it was probably a few awkward moments, but through 20 minutes, I mean, let's address that before we move on. 20 minutes together after being out there for 3 hours, that probably gives them a chance to get some kind of closure so they both can move on with their lives.
Well, I think it does, considering the report before where, you know, as we had, everybody had been talking about that Bill wanted to do the exit when he left New England by phone and not in person, and, you know, and going through all that. What was the relationship like? And I was, when we all saw the hug at the end, there was part of me that said, man, I wish there was a little bit more than that. And then there was part of me that said, well, that's kind of Bill Belichick, you know, kind of the quick hug, as players and former coaches at New England were lining up to hug and say something to Tom Brady, which was very, very cool. But I'm really glad they met after that. I mean, this is a 20-year relationship that, and I'll be honest, in sports, it doesn't always end amicably. You know, you want it to. You want to say, my God, these guys had so much success. How can there be anything bad between them? Well, in real life, you know, it kind of doesn't work that way. Sometimes things can happen that draw, you know, that get that gap going wider and wider over the years until there has to be a decision made. So it doesn't end the way you want. Everybody wanted the picture book perfect ending with this, and it really wasn't. Though they have all the hardware, Bill's going to go down as one of the greatest coaches of all time, and Tom's going to go down as the greatest player, if not one of the greatest player of all time. But I am glad they at least did have that meeting. It was probably better to be one-on-one than in front of all the cameras and everything, because I don't mind some things being private. You know, I know I'm in the media business now, but everything doesn't have to be in front of the camera. Everything doesn't have to be, well, if you didn't say it on Twitter, you didn't really say it. You know, you can be one-on-one with somebody in a room somewhere without cameras and have a nice conversation, and I hope it was.
What made their very brief interaction at midfield more awkward was the fact that Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady embraced much more warmly and for much longer immediately after that. So, but that's classic Belichick. He'll do his talking away from the cameras, away from the microphones, and he'll tell you what he thinks. You may not like what he tells you, but he'll tell you what he thinks. Here's what I think about the end of the game. Because it all kind of happened so quick, Mike. After the field goal hit the upright and fell, I remember sitting thinking, is that it? Wait, that's it. That's basically it. It's a couple of knees in the game. Like, there needs to be something else. But 4th and 3 from the Tampa Bay 37, 59 seconds left, 56-yard field goal. You heard Chris Collinsworth at the top of the show. There was some issue with the plant leg on Nick Folk. It would have tied a career long. It was raining as hard at that moment as it had been raining all night. I mean, first of all, it's not an easy kick. And second of all, you're doing what I mean, this is deja vu all over again for us. We'd have been talking about giving Tom Brady too much time to drive down the field to get the game-winning field goal. We saw Aaron Rodgers do it with 37 seconds last week. Brady would have had more than 50 seconds. Look, hindsight's always 20/20. That's why it's so damn effective. But I don't know why you don't go for it 4th and 3 just to take more time off the clock, make the field goal closer, and minimize the opportunity that Brady's going to have to drive down the field and take your heart out like we saw Rodgers do to the 49ers 8 days ago.
Yeah, listen, and Mike, that's what's going on the sideline. All those calculations, you kind of you throw it all into a hopper, and you have to make a decision somewhat quick. You can't sit down and have a smoke and a pancake over it, and try and decide. You got to decide. So I get what you're saying. It is one of those where if it works, you say great job, and especially if Brady doesn't bring it back, and if it doesn't work, then you start to question coaching moves and moves like that said, do exactly what you said. Don't leave him time. Make the field goal a little closer because it does tie along, and it is in the rain. You're hoping for a little extra juice from the kicker at that point because of the moment to get a little more on the ball. But he had the distance. It just hooked left a little bit. I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, it is one of those hindsight being 20/20 on that, to possibly try something different.
The smoke and a pancake. First of all, I've never heard that before, and I'm going to use it all the time now. Second of all, it takes me back. We grew up in the same time frame, and my experience was on the rare occasions when we went out to eat, because when you're as low middle class as you can be, you don't go out to eat very often. But when you do go out to eat, when the consumption of the food is over and the kids are ready to go, we can't go because the grown-ups must smoke their cigarette. So they have the pancake, then the smoke, but still everything was delayed. Yeah, you got a business to run there. They're trying to clear out the tables and put more folks down, but you got to build in the extra 15 minutes because after everybody finishes their meal, they got to pop open a cigarette pack and smoke one before they leave. That was mandatory.
Take a breath and everybody suck in that nicotine, right? That's what everybody had to do.
All right. Let's. So what? And I understand it's not perfect. You got to make the decision right then and there. You got 40 seconds between plays. I assume Bill Belichick thinks everything through ahead of time. I don't know what his plan was there. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he had some sort of a master plan. Obviously, they didn't win the game, but I don't know. Did he not want to put too much pressure on Mac Jones on 4th and 3? Mac Jones was moving the ball well. Isn't that a way to elevate his standing and give him more confidence if he converts that 4th and 3?
Well, like I said, you're right about Bill. Bill always has a plan and is ready and thinks things out. At least that's certainly what we've known of him as all the hardware that he has on his ring can help prove it. So, I don't know. And God knows if we'll ever get it out of him, the actual truth about it, because your point is a good point. I thought Mac Jones played well. Mac Jones stands in the pocket almost to a fault. I mean, he may have to learn to step up sooner or move a little sooner. We always worry about rookie quarterbacks and them moving too quickly when they feel a little pressure or sense a little pressure. Mac Jones, he stands in there, to the tune. Now, there were 4 sacks. Sometimes he stands in there too long. There were good pass rushes on the other side, don't get me wrong. But I love his ability to stand in there and make the throws. There were a couple, and I know we'll talk about it, a few quarterbacks who played pretty well yesterday. But I do like the way Mac Jones is running that offense. I think it is a big positive for New England. And at the end there, whether, Bill wanted to put him in that situation, again, who knows? I think he felt his kicker could have made it. And quite honestly, listen, a few inches over to the right for that ball, and we may have a different bounce in than we had with Justin Tucker the week before that hit the crossbar and bounced over. If it hits the inside of the upright, it bounces in. We're talking, wow, the Tom Brady comeback is spoiled by the rookie quarterback and the old master. That's when they say it's a game of inches, it truly can be a game of inches.
If nothing else, we were not robbed because stuff happens on the football field, but we were deprived, is the better word, of the opportunity to see what Tom Brady would have done with 50 seconds left. that would have been the highest of drama for any regular season game we ever would have seen. That would have delivered. That's what I'm disappointed about. I wanted the kick to go through because I wanted to see Tom Brady have that opportunity. And maybe that's the easiest explanation. I'm a big believer in Occam's razor. Maybe Bill Belichick just wanted to match wits with Tom Brady with 50 seconds left. Let's go do it. Come on, let's kick this field goal, and it's you and me, Tommy. Let's go do this one last time. And we all were deprived the opportunity for that to happen. I don't know. There's got to be an explanation for it. Like you said, all we're ever going to get for him or from him is a grunt, like we did last night. Did you think about going for it? Okay, thanks. That's all we're ever going to get.
I'm going to stick with Occam's razor because I like that, and I think Bill thought his guy could make it. I'm going to go that simple. And again, he would have if it was a couple more inches to the right, but woulda, coulda, shoulda, doesn't win you a football game.
Mac Jones completed 19 straight passes, matching Tom Brady's longest completion streak of his career, and it was the longest completion streak for any rookie in 40 years. I don't know who it was because it's not like rookie quarterbacks played a lot in the 80s, but whoever it was had 19 straight completions, so we're going to have to look that up at some point today. And I want to take it back even one step farther, Mike, because one of the reasons the Patriots had time is as the Buccaneers were driving for what ultimately became the game-winning field goal, Tom Brady had a notion that he was going to get Antonio Brown a touchdown. And I understand that the defensive back was cramping up. I understand that that's what you do. You target the guy. But throwing it to the end zone twice. Now, the first one, I think Antonio Brown didn't see the ball. That was something that Alan Chris pointed out because I thought when that ball was thrown, that's a touchdown. The second one, kind of a drop, kind of would have been a tough catch at the back of the end zone. But and Peter King and I talked about this on Friday. Antonio Brown had a very short stay with the Patriots, and the departure was extremely acrimonious. Tom Brady was against the decision to cut him. There was bad blood there, and I really feel like Tom Brady wanted to get him a touchdown. And I think that maybe he got a little greedy because if the Patriots had played it right, had milked the clock, had gone for it on 4th and 3, not given Tom Brady any time, they would have walked off the winners. I felt like, hey, if you want to pick on the injured DB, get the first down and keep moving the clock and make it a walk-off game winner for the Bucs because they had enough time and they had the opportunity to milk it down and do it there. I really think that Tom was getting a little greedy because he really wanted to get that ball to Antonio Brown in the end zone.
And again, something we may never know, but I can't sit there and say I don't agree with you because one thing is Tom is human. Everybody's human, and I'm going to bring that up again in a part of this game we're going to talk about. But we have seen Tom, act if a DB kind of shot his mouth off during the week. Tom would kind of go after that guy in the game and then run and do some yelling. Tom was a guy who wanted Antonio Brown in Tampa Bay when everybody in the world wanted to go to Tampa Bay when Tom signed there. But Antonio Brown was kind of like, hey, that hot stove, don't touch him. Well, Tom vouched for him and wanted him there. And it certainly has worked out. So to sit there and say there aren't some personal things, everything is not a business. One thing I have learned through my years that it is a business that can become personal at times. And at times you have to be careful of how personal you make it because at the end it is a business, but it is human emotion. It's filled with human emotion. So yeah, there is part of me that could agree with you and say it ended horribly, obviously, with Antonio Brown in New England. And Tom wanted to say, look, I wanted this guy in Tampa Bay. It's worked out in Tampa Bay, and I'm going to show you just how much by getting him one when I come back to New England. So whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I could see the reasoning for that.
Yeah, you guys finally get me a good weapon, and you run him off after 1 week. Hey, but it worked out. The Buccaneers won. Tom Brady gets his victory in his return to Foxborough. Let's hear from him on his reception that he received and the emotions that he had to process throughout the week leading up to the game.
When you ran out of the tunnel and you did your 100-yard run that you've done so many times, but you ended in the opposite end zone, what was going through your head? What was your first thought there?
Well, I couldn't run through the normal tunnel, so it just happened to be the opposite way tonight. And it's just fun, a lot of emotions, and it's a very, very emotional week. Just, again, these guys are like my brothers, you know what I mean? And I got to, there's two groups of people, all of my Bucs teammates that I love and I'm going to battle with every week. And then there's another group of guys that I see, and those are my friends that I've been with for a long time, Matt Slater and Kyle Van Noy and Dante Hightower and John and Devin and David Andrews and Hoyer, and there's a whole crew, Josh, and it's just, these are the people that I've shared my life with, and very grateful for everything that they've contributed to my life. Very blessed.
When Tom Brady appeared on HBO's The Shop back in June, he admitted that 90% of the things he says publicly aren't true. I have a feeling that falls into the 10%, Mike, but the 90% included him all week long saying, I haven't really thought about the emotion. I haven't really envisioned how things are going to go. As we got closer and closer to the game, it was clear he had planned his emotions and how he would deal with them as meticulously as he plans everything else. He knew what he was going to deal with. He visualized it. He prepared himself. He compartmentalized. And even though he was throwing the ball a little high in the first half, for the most part, he wasn't affected by the emotion.
No, and you know what? See, I was going to bring that up, and I'm glad you did. He was off in passing. Was that emotion? Was that the rain? It's not like he's never played in bad weather before, but he was off. He was through high more than a few times in this game. I was a little surprised at that, to open receivers where he was just flat out missing them. So, again, was it rain? Was it overthrow? Was it emotion? Because I agree with you again. I do think that was in the 10%, and that was true. You could see the love and respect he and his teammates had for one another after that game when they would come up and talk to him. And so the thing that was, and in all honesty, I had no problem with the fans either, if we want to get to them at some point, cheering Tom like crazy when he came on the field in pregame, and then when he ran out for his first series, booing him. Because now, and even Tom said after the game, he said, listen, the end of the day, they're New England Patriot fans. They wanted their team to win. So they cheered him when they should, I thought. And then when he came out for the first series, now he was a quarterback for the opposing team, so they booed him. I didn't have a problem with that at all. What I kind of realized during the game a little bit was, and this has been said about Tom Brady, about like the actual play. Tom Brady has seen everything. Tom Brady has gone through everything. And he has. He has every defense you could imagine, just about every emotion you could imagine. Incredible highs in his career as well. He's been through everything except this. You know what he's never been through? Being on a team for 20 years, being maybe the greatest athlete ever coming out of there, doing things for a town that no one has done for that consistently for that long in this era, and then leaving them and coming back. I mean, that's something he hasn't been through. I know other greats have over time, but Tom hadn't been through that. So the guy that has been through everything had never been through that. So to think there weren't going to be emotions involved, and like you said, him understand what they were going to be. I also heard him say, I know what everybody's going to be thinking for this one. He is a calculating guy, and he does run it all through his mind. But this is something Tom Brady can say, it's factual, never went through anything like this. Being so dominant, becoming the greatest ever in one place for 2 decades, leaving, and then having to come back for that first time and play again. That had to be wild. And again, we're human. That can mess with your emotions a bit.
And he had a long time to prepare for it, not just a week. I know as soon as he emerged as a guy who was going to be landing with Tampa Bay in March of 2020, I looked at the future schedule of the Buccaneers, and I saw it. There it was, 2021 at the Patriots. And I'm sure he had already seen that and thought about that. And it began the process of, I'm going to be going back there, and we'll see what happens, and I'm going to have to be ready for it, and I'm going to have to come out of there with a victory. And he ultimately did. He has now beaten every team, Mike, in the NFL, all 32 teams during the course of his career, and it was the 50th time he engineered a game-winning drive, and it came in the place where he really made his career, won his 6 Super Bowls. And, as you were talking about how the reception he received from the teammates, I mean, he made a lot of people a lot of money and won them a lot of jewelry. And it was his contribution that was far more significant than the contributions of the people who were coming up to pay him his respects.
Yeah, listen, they definitely were. But as he continues to say, you do need a team because, listen, in his early Super Bowls, it was a defense, quite honestly, that was helping to lead that Patriot team. So every one of those Super Bowl wins, it wasn't a Tom Brady MVP. He ran the show. Listen, he was the greatest player of that time overall. I get it. But, there were other parts of just even like last year. They win the Super Bowl if Tampa Bay's defense doesn't do what it does late in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl as well. So he is the best player, I get it, but it is a sport where you do need others. He has nothing to do with special teams, nothing to do with defense. So again, I'm not saying he isn't the greatest player out there, but it is a sport where you definitely need others. And others recognize, this is one thing I've always said, and having been in the locker room as well, everybody knows the pecking order as well of who the high priority guys are and where you fall in that. So we all know he sits on the top of that throne. There's no doubt about it. I just loved seeing it. I loved seeing, just a couple of simple words, because it is a sport where I think if you play a long time, if you end up with a few really good friends, you're lucky. For the most part, you have acquaintances, right? You're a teammate for a while. You're closer to some teammates than others. There's some teammates you'd never even think about hanging out with, and you don't. A locker room is a weird place with 53 on the active roster and more, on the practice squad and stuff. Not everybody gets along all the time. So if you can have those true friends after it, and I mean true good friends, not, acquaintances and then decent friends, but real friends. For the most part, your teammates and your acquaintances. But when you play that long together and especially have that much success, that a bond definitely grows. There's no doubt about that. And it was very cool to see the reaction, especially with his old offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels. That was, they did have a special bond. But with the players, that was a very, very cool thing. There were players literally lined up, to talk to Tom and say hi to Tom and whatever they were going to say to him. I will say this, though. I am kind of bummed Gronk didn't go back, and not to play, but go back, and have a little bit of the comedic part of this thing because, we would have laughed with him a little bit. But it would have been the same thing, him seeing former teammates. But it was just cool, in a sport where you play for a team. What he is doing and what he has done is so not the norm. To be able to call your shot on when you want to retire, like some people do, for the most part, a league retires you. Like people ask me, when did you retire? I said, well, the league retired me in '94 because nobody called. That's how it is for most people. This is an incredible career for him and for guys that can be able to call their shots and to play this long in one spot and have this much success. It's unprecedented. It's ridiculous. But I love seeing that bond because at the end of the day, when a player leaves the game, Mike, and they get asked, what do you miss most about the game? 9 times out of 10, that guy is going to say the locker room. They're going to miss what you had in the locker room. They're going to miss, you spend more time with those players than you do with your family, with all that you do and the time that you spend together. So the bonds that are there, and sometimes they last a lifetime and sometimes they don't, but at least for that season, they're there, and it's an incredible moment. And how many times they got to hold up the trophy, and the whole goal is when there's all zeros on the clock at the end of the Super Bowl, you're holding up, the Vince Lombardi trophy. You've hit your goal. What a feeling that has to be.
And we were showing the video of all of the various people who came up and greeted Tom Brady. Everyone made an appearance except Luca Brasi, I think, at the effort to pay homage to Tom Brady. And, what makes those bonds more important is the fact that every year in today's NFL, because it's changed dramatically, 93, 94 was when it really kicked into free agency and the salary cap, and so many guys leave, and every year a team is its own one unit, and it changes so much from year to year. The fact that Brady and Belichick were together for 20 years in this era, in this climate, really is amazing. Let's hear some grumbling from Bill Belichick about Tom Brady's performance last night in the Buccaneers' victory.
You coached Tom Brady in practice for 20 years, but this is the first time you went ahead against him in a game. What was the experience like going?
We went against Tom Brady every day in practice defensively. So it's not like we've never seen Tom Brady before.
Was the experience of coaching against him in a game any different?
they're a good football team. He's a great quarterback. I mean, I think that's all goes without saying.
Yeah, I mean, that is the reality. He dealt with him every year, but they were on the same team in all those practices. They were working together to make themselves better, and I still wonder how much of that experience Bill Belichick filed away. Hey, look, you mentioned Gronk. Gronk told Jay Glazer, and Glazer reported yesterday on the Fox pregame show that Gronk had 4 cracked ribs, a broken rib, and a punctured lung, and I think the Buccaneers did a good job of playing the game, of making it look like he was going to be there. We were all kind of stunned when we found out that he's not going to be there. He was listed as doubtful on Friday, which I think is probably a little BS. There was no way he was going to play in that game. What a difference it would have made if Brady would have had Gronk in the red zone. Brady talked about the red zone issues. It's because he didn't have Gronk. That game could have been a blowout if Gronk had been there, Mike.
Oh, listen, I completely agree. Those two together, obviously what they did in New England and the bond they have in Tampa Bay, that's what I talked about with Gronk when he retired and then came back. If he just came back and played in the red zone, it would be worth having him back because of how dangerous those two are in the red zone. So I agree. Listen, it depends on how long it takes, but at this point, for him to come back, at this point, I highly doubt they're going to have an issue getting into the playoffs. This is about, especially with a guy who's a little older and is so specifically good on the field, but specifically good in the red zone area. You just make sure he's right. You don't want to bring anything back. Now, cracked ribs can heal. Depends on if there's any other damage. Was there cartilage torn between the ribs? I mean, there's a lot that can go on there. And if these are games that have to be played, you can throw a little magic juice in there and try and play if you want to, but there's no need to right now. So he's a guy, because he's older and we know what his worth is, to just make sure he's right. They have plenty of other talent on that team. They're going to make the playoffs. Just, again, the end goal. We all had this game marked. I get it, as, in the first quarter of the season. But for these players, it's an end game. It's an end goal. And for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's nothing short of obviously going back-to-back and winning a Super Bowl again. And to do that, they certainly could use the services of Gronk. So no matter how long it takes, it doesn't matter. Just make sure he's ready to go by the end of the season.
Strange as it seems, the season will indeed continue after last night. I know it felt like the Super Bowl vibe, but the Buccaneers get the Dolphins on Sunday, and we don't know how long Gronk will be out. And you mentioned the magic juice. Just hopefully Dr. Needle will be more careful than he was when he visited Tyrod Taylor last year. But Gronk's already had the punctured lung. It's not like the needle can repuncture it. It's already been punctured. It sounds like he's going to be out for a while, though. I'm surprised they didn't put him on injured reserve, because under the current rules, you could put him on injured reserve on Saturday, and he still only has to miss 3 games, and then he can come back at any time. I don't know what kind of game they're playing here, but we've seen the Bucs play plenty of games over the past couple of years since they've gotten Tom Brady, from tampering with him openly, from hiding his MCL tear last year, never putting it on the injury report, to the gamesmanship that we saw. Bill Belichick getting a little taste of his own medicine, frankly, from the Buccaneers in the days leading up to the game. You talked eloquently about the relationships, and we let the tape play of Belichick talking about Brady's performance. Let's hear Brady on the relationship with Bill Belichick.
Tom, Bill was just in the locker room. Can you discuss your interactions with Bill on the field and I guess in the locker room after the game?
Yeah. All those are personal. So we've had a personal relationship, and, for 20 plus years. So he drafted me here, and I've had a lot of personal conversations that should remain that way, and they're very private. And I would say so much is made of our relationship. And, as I said earlier this week, from a player standpoint, you just expect the coach to give you everything he's got. And I'm sure as a player, that's what he was hoping from me. But, nothing's really accurate that I ever see. It's all kind of, definitely doesn't come from my personal feelings or beliefs. And I have a lot of respect for him as a coach, and obviously a lot of respect for this organization and, all the different people here that try to make it successful.
It was almost comical how that began. Hey, Tom, will you talk about your communications with Bill? Yeah. It's personal. Yeah, sure, I'll talk about it. I'm not saying anything about it. Hey, you know, the gamesmanship needs to continue between these two guys. We don't know. There's no guarantee it's the last time we're ever going to see Brady versus Belichick. The formula that they've put in place for that 17th game could cause the Buccaneers and the Patriots to cross paths sooner than 4 years from now. That's a new twist to the NFL. We're seeing that this year where teams that ordinarily would play every 4 years are getting together again. Seahawks and Steelers in a few weeks are coming up on Sunday Night Football, even though they played 2 years ago and otherwise wouldn't have played for 2 more years. So that could happen. Or Brady could end up on another team. Or who knows? Maybe they end up in a Super Bowl next year. Probably not this year. But there's this, even though we all wanted some closure, there's no guarantee it's over. They could face off again at some point the way Brady's going, Mike.
And even if they face off again, Mike, we're not getting closure. And I'm fine with that. Again, we are in an era of if you don't talk about it publicly, it didn't happen. If you don't tweet about it, it didn't happen. If it isn't on your Insta, it didn't happen. Things happen behind that. I'm fine with not knowing what their conversation was. And I don't know what it was. Maybe they don't like each other. Maybe they do. Maybe it's just a business respect. Well, I'm sure at the very least it's a business respect for one another for what they've accomplished. But I don't need to hear it. We're not owed this. You know, in the media or as fans, we're not owed that. Just you pay your ticket to watch the games or we're allowed to cover teams. We're not owed their private conversation. Now, would we like to hear it? Sure, we would like to hear it. But what amazes me most, in an era where if a player wants to empty his chest, he can do it on Twitter or any kind of a social media or on a podcast or whatever, and God knows that we have a number of players that do it. We have 2 people in the most respected or most popular business in the country, 2 people who don't do it that way. And it happens to be Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. 2 of the guys we would want to be like the people of this era and air everything out, and they won't do it. And they never will do it, even though Tom, we know, has opened up a little more going to Tampa Bay. I am fine with this. And again, I'm not going to sit there and try and read in to say, well, if they're staying in generalities, that means they're not getting specific, so maybe they don't really like each other. I don't know. That's between them. I am a go talk face-to-face with a guy type of guy. Go in his office, go wherever, and talk face-to-face. The world doesn't need to hear it, even though we would love to be talking about it today, and it would help out all shows if they did. It's not going to happen with these 2, and I have zero problem with that.
Well, Bill Belichick has helped us out a little bit because when he was asked last night about not going for the 4th and 3, kicking the field goal instead, did you give any thought to 4th and 3? He said not really. He was on the Greg Hill show on WEEI this morning, Mike. And according to Mike Reese of ESPN.com, Belichick was asked about the decision to kick the 56-yarder. He said he was thinking we were going to make it within a couple of inches. Nick's a really consistent kicker. He's been hitting the ball well. He hit that one well, just missed by a couple of inches. So maybe it is as simple as that. Let's go ahead and kick it. We think we have a better chance of making the 56-yard field goal over converting the 4th and 3. It really is amazing, though. Thinking about the era we grew up in and they kicked straight on and a 40-yard field goal was a big deal. The idea that you would take 50 game in the balance, that you would think a 56-yard field goal gives you a better chance of converting 4th and 3. The 8-year-old version of me would be saying, what in the hell are you talking about? 56 yards? I mean, once upon a time, that was a long kick. Now it's like, yeah, 56-yarder, he's got a good leg, he can make it.
56 yards in the rain, by the way, in the rain. Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't even great weather to do it. That's why it makes me, when was it Prater kicked the, I think the 64-yarder in 2013, I believe it was. So in 2021, we get to 66 yards. How soon before that's broken? I mean, Mike, we're going to get a 70-yard field goal at some point out of one of these kickers. So, yeah, the 50-yarders now are just, yeah, okay, send them out. Our guy can make 50-yard kicks, 50-plus. Again, this would have, I believe, equaled his career high in the rain. But it sounds like Bill, or at least that's what Bill is telling us, had really no qualms about doing it, whether there was more thought process or not. Again, I don't know, and we'll never know because it's Bill. But as you just reported that he had said on the show, listen, I didn't really think about going for 4th and 3. We thought our guy could make the kick. So that's what Bill does. And we all know Bill thinks about his decisions.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.